Hello friends, myself Viraj and welcome to GS Core. So today I have with me rank 251 Moksh. Welcome Moksh
Thank you, sir.
and congratulations.
Thank you so much, sir.
So Moksh, first and foremost tell me about your educational background.
So, sir, I am a lawyer. I have done my graduation from Symbiosis Law School, Pune. And prior to my results, I was working at a corporate law firm
Okay,
in the M&A, PE and VC practice.
alright. So that is quite a lucrative job I would say.
Yes.
So वो छोड़ के why civil services then?
Sir, actually, my outlook was from the very beginning that I want to be I want to do something in public service. But more importantly, I was also clear that there are multiple outlets to do public service.
Right.
So, and I didn't want to give all my life to this.
Okay.
In the sense, there were, when you know there is no clear end, we should always take a shift.
Right, right. How did this process start? मतलब how you inducted into the process of civil services and what were your first or initial steps towards studies?
So, right out of my graduation, I was clear that I wanted to give civil services.
Okay.
So, I had started preparing then and there itself. It took me a 2 years time to get here, but during that process, I was invested.
Right.
It is post my results that I decided that I want to shift into the post my interview.
Okay.
And just prior to my results, where I decided to shift into corporate law.
Okay. And if I ask you, कि obviously NCERTs are the first books that you go through. ठीक है? So NCERTs say what were your takeaways and what was basically your outlook towards NCERTs कि इन्हें कैसे पढ़ना है?
I think, sir, NCERTs form the foundation material for all which a student does, and one should go towards it in a step-by-step manner. The first time you should read NCERTs to understand the content,
Right.
not to make notes.
Right.
The second time you know what the content is, so now you can summarize it much more better. So it is there where you should start making your notes.
Okay.
And then finally, when you are very well prepared, you should start synthesizing those notes.
Right. All right. So that will actually मतलब consolidate your knowledge of NCERTs in a complete way.
Yes, it will make revision faster, and revision is of paramount importance in this examination.
Right. Tell me, with respect to prelims, मतलब we were talking before this podcast and you said कि I am neither good, I am neither bad in prelims. So उसका मतलब क्या है?
Sir, actually, prelims over the course of years has evolved to an examination where it's not only your knowledge which will get you through prelims, it is also your deductive reasoning. In fact, I had coined this term that it is general knowledge deductive reasoning.
Right.
Because sheer knowledge will not help you deduct the right outcome.
Right.
It is also about knowing that, for example, sir, a few years ago there was a question which had come that some refugees had fled to some particular place in South America.
Right.
Now, some refugees can go anywhere.
Right. Right.
It is not expected of you to know where each refugee went.
Right. Right.
So, one can look at it that way. And also, this means that your static knowledge should be very clear,
Right.
but your common sense should also apply with that static knowledge.
बिल्कुल बिल्कुल बिल्कुल. All right. CSAT में was there any problem in your attempts?
Honestly, sir, CSAT has been one of those papers which has not been a problem for me.
Okay.
Because I love mathematics.
Okay.
And more than that, I've been able to find some really good guidance in this regard. So that has helped me a lot.
ठीक है. Now tell me, with respect to mains examination, मतलब first I will come to your optional. With respect to mains examination, optional का कितना important role है?
I think optionals are very, very important, and there are two ways in which people approach optionals. One is because it forms the core of their identity. I have since forever now always associated with law because I am a lawyer and I love what I do.
Right.
I believe a lawyer is a social engineer.
Right.
So my optional was always to make sure that there is intricate detail, and I wanted to always be the best at my optional.
Right.
So that worked well for me. But then there are the other people who would choose an optional because the scores make the larger difference in this exam.
Yes, I was actually about to ask you that. कि many of the law graduates, me including during my preparation days, did not go with law optional. One reason being it's too technical. It is said to be too technical. You will now elaborate on that. Second is कि scoring is low. That is what is stated. And third is adequate mentors are not available. So that is the reason I did not go with law as my optional. Now you please provide students with your side of the experience कि आपको law optional में मतलब choosing law optional and then going ahead with it and becoming a topper, how was that particular journey?
I think, sir, I'll have to start off and say that I believed in myself and I knew I am a good lawyer. So the fact that just because marks are coming low or the scaling, I do not know what the scaling is. I do not know what works. But I believe I am a good lawyer and I will give my best on that paper. So my logic was very clear. मैं lawyer हूँ, मेरे 20 मार्क का disadvantage भी है, तो भी मैं lawyer रहूँगा.
Right.
And more importantly, there is a larger image here. Now, many of you would think there is a 20 mark disadvantage while writing the law optional. I guarantee you, when you will go to the interview and you would have known your law optional, you would easily recover that 20-30 marks.
Right.
Because I have known many law optional students across my years of preparation, and I have not seen anybody score below 190. Which is a very big thing in itself, because the panel somewhere really respects technical knowledge, and it respects people who respect where they are coming from. Your background is very important. And lastly,
questions in interview are also oriented toward that, towards the direction of your optional then?
Yes, sir, definitely. In fact, I was asked a few very interesting questions.
Please share.
I was asked, how will you reform the system? How will you, the judiciary is so slow. What do you think? What will you suggest as reform? So I gave it some thought and I said, sir, firstly we have a dearth of judges. So I think it's very less. It's less than 10,000. And we have 140 crore litigants. So somewhere we need to push that. And the second reform which I suggested, and maybe that really caught the panel's eye, was that we should introduce a page limit on judgments. Because frankly speaking, a Keshananta Bharati judgment is a 1000-page judgment. We all write it, we all do our best, but none of us have really understood the basic structure properly. Because nobody has the liberty to read 1000 pages. And that is where the real challenge comes, that in a system where there are hundreds of judgments which the judges have to pass and make law, to have an unlimited amount of reasoning is very problematic for the common man. Because he is unable to grasp it. And maybe this is one of the questions which really clicked.
It was a good question and it was an appropriate answer to that good question. You were speaking about the law optional. Third thing you said, with respect to lack of mentors.
Yes. Sir, I think I really love my optional and I believe there is some kid out there watching this who will get that 300 mark. Now here is a catch. This year the highest was 269 and from the ranked candidates. I of course don't know others, but and mine was 258.
Okay, so you were amongst the toppest, you can say amongst the top fives.
Yes, in terms of the selections which law optional gave this year, there must be nearly 25, maximum 30 candidates who got selected. And if I am in the top 5 to 7 candidates, I think that's a big thing in itself.
It's a big achievement.
Yes.
Okay.
Sir, as far as mentorship is concerned, if you are a law optional student, you do not know what's the right approach, please reach out to me and I'd be very happy to help, because this optional is close to my heart.
So Moksh has been of that attitude for a very long time. ये पहले दूसरों के बारे में सोचते है, फिर खुद के बारे में. He is actually मोक्ष ही है ये. ठीक है. So Moksh, tell me, law का one problem, both of us have done our degrees in law. So जो चीजें 5 साल में हमने पढ़ी है, ठीक है, वो 2 papers में हमें cover करना है. Right? We have to cover all those things in 2 papers. So ये बल्कि तो है.
Yes, sir.
ठीक है. And regular amendments, new law coming in, it adds to the volume. ठीक है. तो how to deal with that?
सर, आई थिंक यहाँ पे फोकस होना चाहिए. लॉ ऑप्शनल का सबसे ब्यूटीफुल एस्पेक्ट है 80% रेपिटेशन रेट है. Like I had reached a point after this exam, like today I am at a point where if I am told to do the law optional, I think I can cover it up back in 14 days.
Right.
Because I've spent so many years making my notes better and better and better.
Right.
So that is something one should appreciate, that if you have an 80% repeat rate in your optional and you might have to put the first 6 months in, but then you're getting the return on it back.
Right.
And more importantly, when you're talking with someone and you're introducing yourself, you not only can you say you're a lawyer, you know what you're talking about. So that is something again which comes into play.
Right. You just spoke about making notes. So what were the parameters based on which you basically made notes?
Sir, I would like to answer this question in a threefold manner.
Please.
Firstly, I took the core books and I read it very sincerely. I made sure my first reading was all about understanding my concept. After I got that done, I made detailed notes. Then I sat and I thought, okay, these are very detailed notes, I can't do it all on paper. I synthesized them down. Like for example, on my Telegram channel, I had made a huge chunk of notes shift into 15-16 pages.
All right.
So that entire thing gets summarized, and I did this for almost every subject. So by the end of it, my optional notes were very smooth. And all I had to do was reread my notes and make current additions.
Right.
An important tip I would say here is when you're making your notes, make them on an A4 size sheet paper and make sure one side is written while the other side is left blank.
Okay.
So what you can do is you can make your current additions on that blank side.
Right. ठीक. That is actually a good tip. And मोक्ष का जो टेलीग्राम चैनल है उसका लिंक यू विल गेट इट इन द डिस्क्रिप्शन सेक्शन. आई होप इट इज ओके.
Yeah, definitely.
ओके. वन मोर थिंग मोक्ष, लॉ ऑप्शन में देर इज एक्चुअली नो शॉर्टकट. मतलब यू हैव टू रीड द रेफरेंस बुक्स. मतलब भले कॉलेज में हमने ना पढ़ी हो लेकिन यूपीएससी के लिए यू हैव टू रीड देम. सो फर्स्ट क्वेश्चन विल बी हाउ डिड यू सिलेक्ट दोज रेफरेंस बुक? बिकॉज मतलब मोस्ट ऑफ द सब्जेक्ट कॉन्स्टिट्यूशन है या जुरिस्प्रूडेंस है, देर आर ऑसम बुक्स ऑन देम, राइट? अब सिलेक्ट कैसे किया आपने? बिकॉज यू आर नॉट रीडिंग फॉर लेजर, आप पढ़ रहे थे मार्क्स के लिए. तो हाउ डिड यू सिलेक्ट देम एंड इन हाउ मेनी साइकिल्स डिड यू रीड दोज बुक्स? मतलब वॉज इट ओनली वन टाइम रीडिंग और वॉज इट 2 टाइम रीडिंग? कितनी बार आपने उस साइकिल को रिपीट किया बुक्स रीडिंग के?
सर, मैंने मेरी कोर बुक्स सिर्फ एक बार पढ़ी है, उनकी एक बार नोट्स बनाए हैं, फिर वो कोर बुक्स रख देनी है.
Okay.
They are this huge books.
Right.
So when you start thinking of it, you're carrying like a good 10 kgs if you're carrying the entire syllabus.
रतन लाल, धीरज लाल, अवतार सिंह.
और इसका ब्यूटी क्या होता है सर, पता है? आप जब कोर बुक से रेफर करके बना रहे हो नोट्स, मेरे इंट्रोडक्शन हमेशा ऐसे होते थे. फॉर एग्जाम्पल, let us talk about how Anson said an acceptance is like a matchstick to a train of gunpowder.
Right.
Now I could quote Anson because I remember he said it very interestingly somewhere in again Avatar Singh's book. So what happens is you can do that. There are other approaches also. If you do not like the bulk, you want very crisp things. People often refer to dukis. मुंबई में हम झाप वाला करते हैं उसका काउंटर. And वो भी एक अच्छा अप्रोच है. बट क्या होता है, आप स्लोली अपने केस सेलेक्ट करना चाहते हो तो एक रेफरेंस बुक साइड में रखना कोई लॉस नहीं है.
बिल्कुल.
एंड ओवरऑल सर, आई थिंक स्टार्टिंग में कोई भी लॉयर होता है, टॉर्ट लॉ एंड कॉन्ट्रैक्ट लॉ वी ऑल लर्न वेरी वेल इन आवर लॉ स्कूल.
बिल्कुल.
सो यू हैव लर्न हाउ टू यूज अ रेफरेंस बुक देयर. लाइक डोंट गेट मी रॉन्ग, आई एम नॉट सेइंग कि आप जाके वो 1000 पेज की बुक का एक पन्ना पढ़ो.
राइट.
आई एम सेइंग आपके रेलेवेंट टॉपिक का इंडेक्स में नाम ढूंढो.
राइट.
उसके अंदर की मेजर राइटिंग देखो. क्योंकि व्हाट हैपेंस सर इन द ऑप्शन दैट दिस वेरी ब्यूटीफुल फैक्टर एक्चुअली. व्हेन I wrote my first answers. What was happening was criminal law, I didn't have enough content to write. By the time I memorized the section and wrote the essentials and some other data, I was like, I can remember only this much. But then once you start getting the hang of it, then I wanted to really know, okay, let me give you an illustrative example.
Please.
Section 3 subclause 5 or section 34 of the Bharatiya Nyaya, section 34 of IPC, section 35 of BNS talks about acts done in furtherance of a common intention. Now 3 essentials: there must be participation of all, active or passive, there must be a criminal act done, it must be in furtherance of a common intention, and then you start talking about how it's a substantive, it's a rule of evidence and not a substantive offense in itself. So I had like at least 8 to 10 points this way, each supplemented with a case law.
Right.
And since I had read the core book, on my detailed notes I had written the facts.
Right. Right.
What made me more efficient was, core books are your beginning. As you will move further and further, you keep synthesizing it.
Right. Right.
Like by the time I finished this exam, I reached my 4th synthesis level. Like I was at a point कि okay, अब मेरे notes इतने solid है कि मुझे मेरे notes ही पढ़ने हैं.
Right. Other thing is, if you compare the questions that are asked in universities and the questions that are asked in UPSC, so what is your take on that? मतलब कहाँ पे difference है, कहाँ similarities है?
सर अब जितना तो मैं मेरे यूनिवर्सिटी एक्सपीरियंसेस से काउंट कर सकता हूँ. इफ यू वर वाइज इनफ टू चेक योर क्वेश्चन पेपर्स ऑफ द सेमेस्टर लास्ट 5 साल से क्या सेट किया है, डू अ ट्रेंड एनालिसिस, आप एटलीस्ट 60 to 70% क्वेश्चंस तो जानते हो. बिल्कुल. सो ब्यूटी क्या है ऑप्शनल की, क्वेश्चंस बदलते नहीं है इतने. अब मर्डर और कल्पेबल होमिसाइड का डिफरेंस पूछा है, दैट्स गोना स्टे कांस्टेंट. It's a 100-year-old debate. In fact, I had read it in a judgment. That from the past 100 years, we are again re-explaining this difference. So one must appreciate that fact that when you know the question and you know the answer, all you are supposed to do is create the most creative answer.
Right, right.
And coming to the question which was asked, I think one should just make sure that while they are making all this, they are actually trying to put the answer on paper and check.
Right.
Yeah.
If I go further and get into GS now, अच्छा फिर से एक law पे एक आखिरी सवाल. If a student wants to take law as an optional, so tell me what should be the design of his roadmap. कि किस subject से शुरू करे, किस subject पे जाए. मतलब obviously it is subjective, but what will be your advice?
I think आप सबसे पहले start कीजिए उन subjects से जो लंबे हैं. International law and criminal law दोनों in their own regard are the longest subjects.
Right.
Consti law आप कैसा है, आप GS तक पहुँचोगे तब तक आप Consti law कर ही लो.
Right.
So the beauty is 25% of the optional has an overlap, constitutional law, and it helps you in GS.
Right.
So international law, once you've covered it, you are anyways done with paper 1. Right. Administrative law, there's a little bit which you need to add, but that's fine.
Right.
And crimes, international law, taught in contract you've done well in college.
Right.
So you somehow get the notes and you get through. Consti you again get through. CLD is the most challenging part. So I'd say keep it for the end.
Okay. Why is it the most challenging part according to you?
Sir, the thing is, the questions are completely based on contemporaneous affairs. And they are not the types one generally can know after covering the optional also.
Right.
So, for example, if there's a amendment which came to the Competition Act, that might be a possible question.
Right.
And that has several overlaps. But it would be best to cover it at the end, because as you get near the exam, you know what the current of that year is.
Right. Right. ठीक है. And what about case laws?
I think, sir,
याद रखने में थोड़ा प्रॉब्लम तो होता ही है हर किसी को. नहीं मतलब ऑब्वियसली कॉलेज में हम लोग पढ़ते हैं, बट नॉट विद दैट फोकस. उतने फोकस से शायद हम लोग कवर नहीं करते. यहाँ पे इट इज़ कंपलसरी, मतलब एक तरह से कंपलसरी है. यू कैन नॉट राइट द पेपर ऑफ लॉ ऑप्शनल विदाउट केस लॉस, राइट? सो हाउ डिड यू कवर केस लॉस?
आई थिंक सर मेरी फर्स्ट टाइम में मिस्टेक क्या थी, मैं केस लॉस को इतना पढ़ के चले गया था कि आई यूज्ड टू शो माय नॉलेज. एंड द प्रॉब्लम विद लॉयर्स आर वी आर वेरी सेल्फ अश्योर्ड इंडिविजुअल्स. So like we have written the right answer. Like for example, if it's Article 12 state, you'll write University of Madras versus Shantabai. You'll write Sukhdev Singh versus Bhagat Ram. You'll keep going all the way till Ajay Hasya, Khalid Mujib, and then that is the class answer. But then we forget that okay, there are like everyone's a lawyer, everyone's writing the same case law. And as far as memorization is concerned, sir, I think it is a memory intensive optional, that's the truth. If you do not like to recount on your memory, the optional might not be the wisest of choice for you. Because that is there in every optional. I don't think memory can be evaded.
Right.
Yeah. But you need to again understand that when you're writing that case law, you're not writing it in a manner that you write the case law and then the sentence.
Okay.
you write your jurisprudence first.
Okay.
What you
Right.
derived out of it, and then put the case in brackets. Like that is a smarter move. It appeals more to showing that you're writing an answer.
Right. And it also provides a better flow.
Yes.
Right. Now coming to general studies. So you did exceptionally well in this attempt when it came to GS paper 4. ठीक है. So GS paper 4 is like कि बच्चे डरते हैं उस सब्जेक्ट से, लेकिन you are doing well in that. So क्या ऑप्शनल का उसमें थोड़ा बहुत हाथ था कि was it completely independent of optional? थोड़ा बहुत तो इन्फ्लुएंस रहा होगा of optional in GS paper 4.
100%, sir. In fact, I have consistently scored good. I scored a 120 last year. This year 116.
ठीक है.
And the thing is, ethics का पेपर में एक blend आता है हर साल. Like the one where I scored 120, उस साल law का blend था.
हाँ.
So coercion, undue influence का direct question था. And क्या होता है, आप जब वो technical field से आते हो, तो फिर आपको थोड़ा एक edge भी मिलता है.
Right.
Like for me, section 144 CRPC is a very clean head thought.
बिल्कुल.
When I'm talking about unlawful assembly or you know how to control that. So one should also take those things into account. And ethics paper preparation strategy तो was very clear. मेरे 9 पेज के notes है.
अच्छा.
All I do is memorize my words, my examples, my thoughts. Question आया, so I use what are the ethical values which resound best with me. मेरी definitions of course clear थी.
Right.
So मुझे बस उधर जाके मेरी definition के हिसाब मैं उधर जाके अपना डेटा दिखाने नहीं चाहता था.
बिल्कुल बिल्कुल.
I used to try to understand okay question की demand क्या है, मुझे क्या पता है. And initially I used to write in paragraphs.
Right.
That day scored me well. Then I shifted to points. That also scored me well.
Right.
But one thing which has remained constant is in code-based questions, I have always written in paragraphs.
Okay. ठीक है. Again, from the point of view of ethics itself, how did you basically deal with philosophers, thinkers in the paper of ethics?
I think I tried to first understand what that quote meant to me. And when I knew what that quote meant to me, I tried to think of a person or an analogy or something which relates to that quote.
ठीक है.
For example, to give to create a fire, you must give way to burning. Something on this line was a quote. So I thought, okay, who has done something like that? Who has sacrificed himself to create a fire for others?
Right.
Then I could, for example, I could create an analogy with regard to how Gandhiji gave selfless service to the nation.
Right.
How he, initially changed his own life philosophy.
बिल्कुल बिल्कुल.
So ऐसे आप थोड़े और complex और अच्छे examples सोच सकते हैं. But thought process वही होता था.
And again with respect to case studies. So case studies solve करते वक्त in ethics, what should be the mental framework जिससे मतलब you can maximize your marks?
I would say case studies, the ethics paper is a very time constrained paper. और मेरा दिमाग बहुत clear था. Case study में 4 question आते हैं.
ठीक है.
I never drew any stakeholders, nothing other than the question.
Right.
Because there is a lot of I wouldn't say buzz in the market, but I would say a lot of people try to approach it in a way they start answering things which were not asked.
Right.
And then they go to the question. By the time they've already wasted half the page. So directly hit the demand, hit it as good as you can.
Right.
And make sure you read the case study properly. Circle the major points, questions, understand the dilemma. You have less time, but make sure you efficiently use the data in your questions.
Right. Now for this because ethics paper 4 में one problem which I have noticed is the length of the questions. ठीक है. And for the purpose of doing it at a good speed, आपको बहुत सारी प्रैक्टिस ज़रूरी है. So you must have gone through test series.
Yes.
मुझे बताइए मोक्ष कि टेस्ट सीरीज का अच्छा यूटिलाइजेशन कैसे किया जा सकता है?
सर एक्चुअली मैं तो एक स्टेप पीछे आऊँगा.
ओके बोलिए.
पेज लंबा है.
हाँ.
I know I can't write. So the exam is not about testing कि if you're the fastest writer.
Right.
It's about writing quality answers. In my ethics case studies 62 pages होते हैं मेरी नॉलेज से. मुझे पता है 1-2 केस स्टडी में मैं सारे पेज नहीं भर पाऊंगा.
राइट.
मैं वो पेज स्ट्राइक कर देता.
सही बात है.
क्योंकि मुझे जितने आंसर में क्वालिटी चाहिए और जो पॉइंट्स मुझे कहने हैं, इफ आई कैन फिट इट इन अ क्विकर पेस इट्स फाइन.
राइट.
एंड I would rather say, rather than trying to fill all pages and miss the last question, You rather fill each page according to what your time demands and let go of things which you can't, which are not in your control.
बिल्कुल बिल्कुल.
So that would be this. And as far as test series are concerned, sir, I think it's all about just practicing each paper changes. If the case study is extremely difficult, you might be very well prepared, but उस दिन चमका तो चमका वाला सीन है सर.
राइट. नाउ कमिंग टू जीएस पेपर 2, थोड़ा तो उसमें यू हैड एडवांटेज बिकॉज देर इज पॉलिटी एंड देर इज इंटरनेशनल रिलेशंस, एंड इंटरनेशनल रिलेशंस आर क्लोजर टू इंटरनेशनल लॉ, जो हम लोग लॉ में पढ़ते हैं. ऑब्वियसली एग्जैक्ट सेम तो बिल्कुल नहीं है, बट देर इज अ सर्टेन डिग्री ऑफ ओवरलैप. ठीक है. सो टेल मी, फॉर अ जीएस स्टूडेंट, ठीक है, व्हाट शुड बी द अप्रोच फॉर जीएस पेपर 2?
Actually, sir, I think one thing as far as polity is concerned, it is very static. The points are known, the data is known. You will start with an article, you will end with a good quote that this article is the soul of the constitution.
Right.
But
लेकिन कोर्ट में भी ना मोक्ष, जैसे आई थिंक यू विल एग्री विद मी, इट हैज टू बी लिमिटेड. 4 लाइन या 5 लाइन का कोट इंट्रोडक्शन में नहीं लिखना होता है. प्लीज टेल दिस टू द स्टूडेंट्स.
आपको जीएस पेपर्स में ना न्यूमरोलॉजिकली यू शुड नॉट फॉल बिहाइंड, दैट्स द ओनली लॉजिक. आपका रियल टेस्ट है वहाँ पे कि आप क्वेश्चन पढ़ के कंप्लीट कर लें.
राइट.
क्योंकि एंड इंटरनेशनल रिलेशंस इज वन एस्पेक्ट आई थिंक इज रियली इवॉल्विंग.
राइट.
सो वहाँ डायनामिज्म है, तो आप अगर वहाँ पे ज़्यादा फोकस करें तो GS2 शायद बेटर हो.
राइट. नाउ वन लास्ट क्वेश्चन आई वुड से, एंड दिस इज फ्रॉम द पॉइंट ऑफ व्यू ऑफ हेल्थ. मतलब the struggle is rigorous. Mental and physical health दोनों को maintain करना है. So आपने ये कैसे किया?
I think my hobbies are the ones which kept me calm and kept me focused. So I've always had a very avid interest in knowing about companies and stocks. So मैं रोज सुबह मिंट पढ़ता था.
Right.
तो मेरी लाइफ में यूपीएससी के अलावा एक वो हसबस होती है कि ओके ये कंपनी के साथ ये चल रहा है, दिस इज गोइंग ऑन. आई रियली एंजॉयड इट. And reading short stories, again, I really love reading many authors like Tolstoy, Chekhov, O. Henry. So, and this, in fact, these two hobbies are the ones which really gave me my real advantage.
Okay, right.
So, in my interview, that allowed me to really take the edge. And
any question, मतलब जो short stories की तरफ से या stock market की तरफ से आया?
Actually, I was asked a very interesting question. So, in my panel in the middle of the interview, after a fair bit of technical questions, one of the panel members asked, so Moksh, you must have read Chekhov, O. Henry, other Saki. So, can you tell me a favorite story of yours? I was like, sir, I'll have to say The Gift of the Maggie by O. Henry.
Right.
And he asked me, okay, tell me the meaning of this story. So I said, sir, it talks about love. And how love is about giving everything you have for others.
Right.
And so I explained love very beautifully in the middle of the panel. And शायद प्यार समझाते समझाते उन्हें मेरी बातें प्यारी लग गई.
आप प्यारे लग गए.
हाँ. और that really played in my favor. So 206 उस साल बहुत अच्छा स्कोर आया है.
बिल्कुल बिल्कुल. मोक्ष, सक्सेस इन सिविल सर्विसेज ना बेसिकली इट कम्स बिकॉज ऑफ कंट्रीब्यूशन ऑफ मेनी पीपल. सो अगर कुछ लोग हैं जिनका आप नाम लेना चाहें, सो प्लीज.
सर, आई वुड फर्स्ट एंड फॉरमोस्ट लाइक टू थैंक गॉड. भगवान के अलावा कुछ नहीं होता. बट कमिंग टू अदर पीपल इन माई लाइफ, माई फैमिली, माई अंकल, माई आंट, माई पूजा दीदी, चिराग भाई, दिनेश अंकल, एंड मोस्ट इम्पॉर्टेंटली माई फ्रेंड्स हार्दिक, जीतू, सुरभि, Sakshi, so many other friends. They've all been so paramount here. And my cousins also, Kinjal, Siddhant and Tanishka.
Right.
So I've been blessed with a very amazing family and friend setup. So they keep me going, they make me feel like, okay, exam important है, exam सब कुछ नहीं है, and मैं बहुत capable हूँ. तो उनके confidence ने मुझे actually confidence दिया है कि मैं कुछ बन सकूँ.
Right. मोक्ष, ये जो आपने लाइन बोली ना, एग्जाम इम्पॉर्टेंट है बट इट इज़ नॉट एवरीथिंग, प्लीज़ इसको थोड़ा सा एलेबरेट कर दीजिए. बिकॉज आई हैव सीन गुड स्टूडेंट्स क्रम्बल अंडर प्रेशर बिकॉज ऑफ दिस कि यूपीएससी ही सब कुछ है. प्लीज़ अगर उसके ऊपर आप कुछ बोल पाए.
एक्चुअली सर, यूपीएससी में क्या होता है, आप आते हो एक अच्छे पैशन के साथ. It might be public service, it might be a sense of duty or commitment. But what happens after a few years, some sort of vanity starts kicking into most. And then it is no more a fight for public service. It's a fight for maybe ego or some cost. And that is where one must ask, take a step back and ask, am I doing this exam for the same motivation why I entered? Or am I making it a profit loss analysis and doing it for sunk cost?
Right.
So if it is the latter, then one should rethink whether is my pride or ego or is my victory more important than the pursuit of a larger goal. Because again, as I said, sir, life is random.
Right.
And you might be doing everything right. I have seen people who are 10 times better than me perform, not get that rank. And it is that is where I really feel that it's not a examination where I feel that that should happen with them.
Right.
Because I respect people who have been so dedicated. But again, life might have better plans.
बिल्कुल.
And जो भी होता है अच्छे के लिए होता है. So ये बात हमेशा हमें अपने अंदर inculcate करनी चाहिए.
Right. So UPSC is not end of the game.
I think UPSC is the beginning of a game.
Right.
आप UPSC क्लियर करो ना करो, आप एक अच्छे इंसान बन जाते हो.
सही बात है.
और उसकी वैल्यू शायद आपको क्लीनली दिख नहीं रही होगी, बट इट इज़ एन इंटेंजिबल बेनिफिट विच विल अवॉर्ड यू थ्रू आउट योर लाइफ.
राइट. थैंक यू सो मच मोक्ष फॉर योर टाइम. बहुत ही अच्छा डिस्कशन रहा, स्पेशली फॉर लॉ ऑप्शनल. आई थिंक स्टूडेंट्स from law background will now be motivated to take up this optional and do it in the right manner, and I hope you will help them.
I will definitely, sir. I'll try my best.
Thank you so much and best of luck.
Thank you, sir.